So, good day to everyone, dear friends. Welcome to the HR Management in IT program. Today is the first session of this course. We will explore what HR is in IT using Google as an example. There are a total of 22 sessions in this course. It has grown significantly for us recently. This is the course website and a bit about why you need to take such a course. When you start working in IT, you not only immerse yourself in a fascinating world of the future, but also accelerate your career growth at the same time because you begin to earn more. I worked at an IT company, hired for an IT company, and headhunted. I understand that IT companies can pay higher salaries than non-IT industries, but there are different companies. In some companies, they pay more, in others, less. But if you work in HR, then working in IT is at least interesting. Honestly, among all my acquaintances, I have only one person who doesn't like working in IT. He worked as HR in IT. It's a guy, but he says it's not for him. Everyone else who ended up in IT was satisfied. Some HR professionals who work or have worked in the IT industry don't want to leave this industry. Next, I'll tell you a bit about my experience for those of you who don't know me yet. My name is Mike Pritula. I didn't start in an IT company. It was Alpha Bank. It's also a technological company with many office employees. There was an IT department for which I was looking for candidates with whom I closely interacted, meaning I had an understanding of IT. Then I worked at the STB TV channel, where there were also many IT employees. And probably a media company is very similar to an IT one because Wargaming, they found me and said that they looked at my experience, they looked at my company, and realized that we have a lot in common. So, come work with us. They even confirmed this from their side. So, I went to work at Wargaming. That was my first full IT experience. And although I was very close to the IT industry, I saw a completely different world. Very interesting, very unusual. I really enjoyed working at the company. Then I worked at an IT startup. Back then it was still a startup, the company Preplay. Now it is quite a reputable company. Then the experience maybe not experience, more like this. The results I demonstrated at Preplay, the company Ideal wanted to replicate for themselves. And they took me to the company Ideal just so I could repeat everything I did in Preplay because the initial data were very similar in terms of both quantity and development stage of the process. Then I consulted PeopleForce, and then I created the academy. And further than HR product, it's called EduTech. So education technology intersections. I don't think the IT world was left somewhere on the side. And in general, I've been fascinated by the IT world since childhood. I have a computer. I got into it very early. I studied programming languages. I programmed in Pascal. I programmed in Delphi. I studied assembler but didn't find a use for it. I assembled computers. I built the first computer network in the dormitory. We had about 16 computers there. My computer served as a server in that network. So I provided the internet for the first time in that network. I have a lot of computer and IT related things. In my work, I rely on best practices. Here is the list of what I track, and I see we are growing. It won't be difficult. Write down what your job is, what your position is, who is watching on YouTube. You can write it in the comments to the video. I also read all these comments, and we'll be able to see who watched this video and what their positions are. So, if you want to introduce yourself, don't hesitate to write what your job is. In this course, as in all our courses, there are homework assignments, and completing them will allow you to receive our diploma. We issue the diploma on a great platform, a digital platform called Accredible, the most popular in the world. For example, Google also uses this platform. Our course consists of 22 lessons, 2 of which are live and the rest are recorded. And the recorded ones are done recently. meaning they are all up to date. I regularly review them and update those that need it so that each recorded lesson is current. Today we'll talk about how in Google, as an example, different processes work. So I see the first comment has appeared. My name is Denise. I have 9 years of experience working at Carlsberg. We have a good company at Preply. Our CTO worked as a trade marketing manager at Carlsberg. I was surprised to learn that he was a marketer, and at Preply he's the CTO. Carlsberg has a good school. I was a sales representative for 7 years and worked as a supervisor for 2 years. Now I am very attracted to the IT field and strive to develop in this direction. I am interested in motion design and programming. I'm actively studying Python and C++ on my own. Currently, I am targeting HR in IT, and I think that my communication skills and experience working with people will help me succeed in this field. Right, Dennis? The FMCG sector in which you used to work or are working is indeed a good feeder for the IT industry, and people successfully transition, so you have every chance. Carlsberg has a good internal school, good processes, a systematic company. I know Petr Chernishev, if I'm not mistaken. He led Carlsberg Group. I'm not sure if he was responsible for one country or multiple countries, so you have every chance. Why do I use Google as a basis for comparison? Well, first, it is the best employer in the world according to Forbes, and in more than 15 countries, this company is truly the best employer. According to LinkedIn, most people want to work at Google, so LinkedIn sees how people respond to job openings. Google alone receives more than 2 million resumes each year. Imagine that. It's like the population of a small country. Annually, employees recommend more than 100,000 candidates. That's also a colossal referral program. In 25 years of building the company, they have developed the best human resources system in the world. They have 160,000 employees, and that's just in Google. There are 4,500 HRs working, and note that this is approximately 35 employees per one HR. So they really invest in HR, they believe in it, and they build it. This is a company that is constantly growing. So there was, of course, a downturn, like everyone else, and it happened before too, but it is growing. Yes, it is growing successfully. This is a company that is among the top most valuable brands in the world. Well, they sometimes switch places with Apple. Well, I don't know, the top 5. The leadership can sometimes change, but it is in the top. And how does this work in practice? Let's start with recruiting. So how does recruiting work? At Google, hiring employees according to Google is the main HR task of any organization. And they understand that hiring just anyone and then trying to fix it is impossible. It is better to invest money in hiring to the maximum rather than in training. Therefore, they spend twice as much on hiring as others, and on training, as a rule, less than the others, because they understand that it's better to hire correctly from the start. Next, what are the features of recruiting at Google? They started hiring, it was somewhere around 1999. When were there already leading IT companies? Yahoo, Excite, Infosys, ClickUs, AltaVista, AOL, Microsoft already existed, and but they were a garage company, a no-name, small. 2 guys founded it. They needed to find their own approach, so they said, let's not rush. The first rule of hiring, never rush, hire slower than others. The second rule, you need to interview and consider as many candidates as possible. Accordingly, you need to hire only those who are at least better than you in something. I learned about this rule somewhere in 2010 when I actively started hiring people for my team. And since then, I have always started looking, at least in something, is the person I am hiring better than me or not? Let it be in an area not even strongly related to work, but he must be better. And here's the feature. Hiring managers at Google do not make hiring decisions themselves. There is a special committee Why did they do it that way? Oh, Camilla wrote. Let's read Camilla's comments. My name is Camilla. I'm from Tashkent, Uzbekistan. Yes, cool. I've been in the HR field for 1.5 years. Started right in it. Outsourcing companies, development of various systems, and so on. I want to continue developing in this field since I completed a technical education. And I'm also somewhat familiar with programming. You know, in IT, they really appreciate HR. Well, not just HR, but also other non-IT positions that understand IT and programming. You know, it's an immediate plus for you. They will treat you better. It's true. So, why did Google strip managers of the authority to hire people themselves? Managers have several typical mistakes. When they urgently need to fill a vacancy, they lower the standards. Some managers hire through acquaintances to do someone a favor. And when a manager hires an employee, the employee feels gratitude and obligation towards the manager. And this, according to Google, is bad because Google aims to minimize the power of managers. Next, 0.25% is 1 out of 400. This is the conversion rate of received resumes into hires. This is what it means to look at many candidates. That is, they do not receive 10 resumes and hire someone. They really consider a lot, analyze a lot before hiring someone. Further, they tried different approaches in hiring, even the most creative ones. Once in San Francisco, they placed a mathematical puzzle. In the end, it did not lead to successful hiring, but showed, or rather created, such good buzz around the brand and played well for recognition. Next, what qualities do they look for in candidates? According to Google, humility is important in a candidate. Integrity. Integrity is the ability to do your work even when no one is watching or supervising you. That is, if you promised, you did it. Leadership and what they call googliness. They also use algorithms and data in recruiting. They developed a system for comparing resumes with the profiles of their own employees quite some time ago. And if the system detects that an employee and a candidate have something in common, for example, they studied together, the employee is asked to provide some information about the person, to tell something about them. How did Google conduct interviews before they started improving recruitment? In the 2000s, they asked any questions without structure. There was no coordination between interviewers. Some questions were missed, and candidates were invited for repeated interviews over and over. This created a bad experience and negative reviews. At that time, there were a lot of bad reviews about interviewing at Google. Recruiting took 6 months or more. A candidate could go through 15 to 25 interviews before being hired, and it consumed a lot of hours. Employees spent on interviews. That is, for one hire, all employees spent up to 250 hours because there were many candidates, many repeat interviews. This is really 2 months of an employee's time. It's very expensive. But partially this worked because the focus was on avoiding wrong hires. They understood that they were losing someone because of this, and they were prepared. Lose good candidates. But they understood that through such a complex system, a bad candidate definitely wouldn't get through. And they had a big fear among the first 100 employees of hiring the wrong person, because when there are few people, each mistake has a significant impact. Later on, when the company is large, a recruiting mistake will not have as much influence. They found their best source of hiring. When they tried everything, they realized that the best way to hire was when employees recommended other employees. And they managed to hire up to 50% of people this way. Once, in 2009, the referrals decreased. They raised the bonus for a successful hire. But nothing changed, because the problem was not with the referrals after all. Firstly, employees saw that they made many recommendations, but few were hired. Secondly, they recommended not so much for the money, so they started to correct the situation. They introduced rules for dealing with such referrals. If an employee recommends someone, The recruiter must contact the candidate within 48 hours. A weekly report on the status was sent to those who made recommendations. They changed the work format and started asking the employees different questions. They stopped asking who could recommend a good financial specialist to us and started asking which of the best financial specialists you remember working with. They came up with this idea where they started gathering Googlers in groups of 20 to 30 to review these Googlers' social media and discuss potential candidate acquaintances. What are the recruitment priorities? They are looking for those who are not actively job searching. They are active LinkedIn users. They have an approach called the known universe method. They map candidates based on their experience and education and preliminarily assess how well these people would fit at Google. Then they ask Google employees to look at the lists and analyze the people they know in the list to see who would fit. The first contacts are made by recruiters, but often engineers and managers are also involved. They build long-term relationships with candidates as they understand that in a year or two, a person may be open, even if they are not open now. They might persuade a good candidate to join the company for 4 to 10 years. They have a very cool career site. Here will be a link, and it's one of the main sources of hiring. They have a separate site about benefits, which is also very cool. To promote the employer brand, they use employee stories, very interesting ones, where a wide variety of employees talk about working at the company, why they joined, and what they value about it. Here's how the site looks. What's also cool on the site is there is a description of the entire recruitment process and a set of recommendations on what the company suggests doing. What is curious is that their job posting is described quite typically. They apparently developed some kind of internal library of job posting texts. Job postings are not written by recruiters, not written in an engaging, creative way. Very typical. Minimum requirements, desired requirements about the role, about compensation, and responsibilities. I think it's because the brand is very well known. They don't need to additionally motivate people to apply for the vacancies. Everyone knows Google. Really? Therefore, they make the job postings moderately attractive so that only those who are truly interested apply. Where is Google currently looking for candidates? Well, firstly, they continue to actively use referrals and strongly believe in them. They work very actively with universities. Yes, they try to recruit graduates from the best ones right there. They post job openings on various sites, LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed. They had an attempt to quit, then they returned. After all, job sites are necessary. They hold all sorts of cool events, conferences, some meetups, some hackathons to attract people and introduce them to the company. In certain cases, they hire recruiting agencies. There was also an attempt to move away from them, but then they realized that sometimes you need to work, and they organize hackathons, coding competitions to attract enthusiasts and try to recruit them. Google uses structured interviews for its interviews. So they realized that when questions are asked randomly, the interviewer forms an impression of the person within 10 seconds, and it is incorrect. Therefore, they developed a science-based, scientifically validated assessment system that helps evaluate people objectively. At its core is a structured interview, which means there is a clear structure. Questions are compiled from a generator. They developed an internal question generator, and people take questions from there. The main task of Google's selection process is to combat the first impression a person makes on others, which forms within the first 5 to 15 seconds, and then we try to prove it to ourselves. And this is often useless. Therefore, according to Google, most interviews are a waste of time because at this interview, almost 95% of the time is spent trying to confirm the impression formed in the first 10 seconds. In Google's opinion, which interviews are pointless? These are case interviews where some invented case, situational interviews, various kinds of puzzles, some problems that are given, or intriguing puzzles, because it turned out that the answers to these interviews, to these questions, do not really predict future effectiveness. Google relies on research in the field of candidate evaluation, which talks about which assessment tools are the most accurate, and accordingly uses the results of this research. They conduct interviews with clear pre-written questions. For the questions, there are clear criteria for evaluating the quality of the answers. They use behavioral and situational interviews. During structured interviews, a candidate is asked to describe a past achievement and explain how it relates to what is needed for the given position. During situational interviews, a hypothetical situation related to the vacancy is presented. That is not just some made-up hypothetical situation, but specifically for this vacancy. They also did the cool thing called Vox Pop in English. We call it Voice of the People. When they started asking candidates how they feel about interacting with us, anonymously or not, through surveys or communication. And they began to improve things based on the analysis. For example, they added office tours and joint meals. They added time where the candidate has the opportunity to ask their questions. And then they started analyzing, improve various aspects so that candidates start giving positive feedback about the selection process. The company Google is actively engaged in social media. The social media is specifically dedicated to work. That is, besides the company's pages, there are pages about working at the company. They are popular with lots of followers and good posts. Well, accordingly, there's Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, where they post videos, Twitter, and Instagram. On Instagram, they post photos and so on. Now, adaptation. The adaptation at Google is so remarkable that they even made a film about it. The internship. Maybe you've heard of it or seen it. What are the goals of onboarding at Google? To discuss a new employee's job responsibilities, to introduce the newcomer to the team, to help them socially adapt, to help the newcomer meet new people and create a social network at Google, conduct monthly reviews during the first 6 months from when a new employee starts, establish an open door policy so that the new employee knows they can always turn to the manager for help if they have questions or need any assistance. Next, the main concept in adaptation is nudging. Google, big fans, call it nudging. It's an attempt to influence a person's behavior through a small nudge. For example, a notification may unobtrusively come to the manager or employee at the right moment, suggesting what's appropriate to do now. For example, the manager's email. For instance, the employee starts on Monday, so on Sunday before the employee starts, the manager will receive a little reminder to discuss duties and responsibilities and assign a colleague as a mentor for the newcomer. By the way, they call newcomers Nooglers. New Googler Nooglers. Help the new Googler create their own network. Well, a network of people contacts. For the first 6 months, hold it once a month. One-to-one meeting and encourage open dialogue. Greetings of newcomers. During the adaptation period, newcomers wear special caps that make them stand out from the crowd. By the way, these are shots from a movie, Interns. But it's true, they really do walk like that. Thanks to this informative sign, all employees are ready to help the new colleague. By the way, I was at the Google campus. I was in San Jose, and we visited the campuses. We went to the Apple campus. We drove up to the garage where Steve Jobs started the company Apple. We visited the Google campus, took a walk. I was surprised at how people just imagine the campus. It's like having many different offices on the premises. There's a main building, and right by the entrance to the campus, there's beach volleyball. Such a court covered with beach sand has a net, and people play volleyball. So the beach is not closed, but they created a beach for these Googlers. Let's go further. These are screenshots of social networks, meaning again, people post them, there the employees leave some autographs, a beanie with a propeller, a real story. Here's another photo, yes, of those newcomers from social networks. We also see these hats. This is a welcome pack, very cool. That is, they give employees a bunch of different stuff. Well, obviously the company is large, with many offices, and in different offices it will be something unique. So here are a few examples. Adaptation consists of stages. Yes, each stage is planned from the job offer to preparation, the first day, subsequent adaptation, and then everything continues. Next, Google works with OKR, which is a performance management method. This is a flexible approach, an agile approach in performance management. It was created at Intel, not at Google, but it became widespread thanks to Google and many companies use it. What is OKR? It is objectives and key results, a way of setting goals. When it is described what the employee wants to achieve and how they will achieve it. Google worked in different ways, sometimes by quarterly periods, sometimes annually, and then quarterly again. Now they have an annual OKR with quarterly reporting on them. Well, actually, you could still say it's quarterly here. And besides that, as we've already seen, employees have regular one-to-one meetings with management. Once a month is the minimum. The OKR system itself is considered one of the newest. Before it, there were other systems like management by objectives, smart approach, the KPI system. OKR is what John Doerr brought to Google. He was one of their first investors. I believe he invested $10 million in them. He worked at Intel and brought this system from Intel. Our employee development also differs from other companies. They say, Google, that employee productivity should be increased by focusing on personal growth, not on rankings and rewards. They measure the effectiveness of each employee quarterly. Moreover, they use different scales. They had a scale from 1.0 to 5.0 with various fractional values, but then they switched to a standard 5-point scale. Clear, understandable, without any commas or any additional digits. After the decimal point, they do a quarterly evaluation. They tried it differently. They tried quarterly, semi-annual, annual. They tried based on OKR without considering OKR. They experimented a lot. Plus, they use a 360-degree evaluation when, besides evaluating results like in OKR, employees are also asked to indicate how the employee behaves. The employee evaluates themselves, their colleagues evaluate them, their managers, and so on. They have experimented a lot with this as well, from standard evaluations, where people simply assess the behavior of others, to descriptions of specific projects in which everyone who participated with them evaluates the person's behavior in this project. For managers, they have guidelines on how to conduct performance reviews. Well, in general, Google has quite an extensive internal database where various processes are described with a lot of materials for managers. Leaders prepare well, train well, supply good instructions and information. Here is a screenshot of how it looks and some moments like how to start a conversation about performance review, what to discuss, and so on. It is interesting from the perspective of the lower 5% rule development. This happens quarterly. That is, each quarter Google identifies 5% of employees with the worst results, but they are not fired. People are informed, dear staff, you are in the bottom 5% this quarter. That is, they say you are among the worst 5% of Google employees. I know it sounds unpleasant. I say this because I want to help you improve the situation and grow as a specialist. And such employees are offered coaching and training. If it doesn't work, the employee is offered another job within the company, and only then are they dismissed if that also doesn't help. At the same time, the company analyzes the best 5%. Google studies them closely to see why these 5% are better. For reported employee development, Google organizes many internal trainings. This is called G2G. Several thousand of these sessions are held annually. Several tens of thousands of Googlers participate in them as attendees, yes, and as trainers. That's also several thousand Googlers themselves. Well, and often people attend more than one session. Culture too, the company Google, especially initially when the company was founded by the two founders, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, they said, we want every employee to think about the company as we do, as if they are also a founder. Yes, they embedded this concept. That is, whether you're an employee, a founder, a senior manager, or a student, the goal is to become part of an environment where you and those around you can achieve success and prosperity, beginning with taking responsibility for this environment. They try to give people as much freedom as possible. Their motto is, give people freedom and they will surprise you. There is a lot of openness and transparency. They say if you believe that people are generally good, don't be afraid to share information with them. At Google, a new engineer gets access to almost all the code from the first day. That is, their local network includes product roadmaps, release plans, employee snippets, meaning who is working on what and what the results are. Employees' quarterly goals are available to everyone, meaning anyone can generally find out anything about any employee. In Google, there is a practice, and this also appeared from the very beginning. Regular all-hands meetings of all employees, they called them DJs. Literally, it's, thank God it's finally Friday, dance and gods of Friday. At the weekly meetings of the work collective called Thank God It's Friday, Larry and Sergey informed the whole company. Initially offline, then online. Last week's news, some updates on products, a new appointment, and they answered absolutely any questions from company employees. There are even recordings online of some of the first of these meetings that can be viewed via a link. Google's corporate culture includes a culture of fun, as they call it, believing that fun is an important element for the company Google, which creates opportunities for free exploration and new discoveries, yet it is more a result of what and who we are, rather than a defining characteristic, as the company Google says. Well, and I remember when, that was 2006, I think. I was working at Alpha Bank. We had a great office. We had a new office in the Business Center Forum. Everything was beautiful. Later, we even added red colors to the interior. It was cool. We were very proud of our office, but when I saw pictures of Google's office, I was envious because there were many different colors, unusual furniture, there were then billiards, ping pong tables, some slides, some arcade machines, musical instruments, exercise equipment. So Google did it first, and at first everyone just laughed at them, saying they organized a kindergarten. Then several years passed, and everyone started copying it en masse. Now, when you visit these companies, if the office is very gray and boring, it feels like you're not in an IT company. The mission of Google is also very interesting. They say that their mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. How they envision their future, their vision is to provide access to global information with a single click. They have principles. They don't call them values or principles, and here is how they sound. 1. Focus on the user, and the rest will follow. Second, it's better to do one thing, but very well. Third, faster is better than slow. 4, the internet is democratic. 5, you don't need to sit at the computer to get an answer. 6, you can make money without doing evil. 7, there's always new information. 8, the need for information crosses all boundaries. 9, you can be serious without a suit. 10, being great isn't enough. These are their principles. Google is also known for its bicycles. I was on this campus and saw many of these bicycles. They look like Ukraine bicycles. You know, very simple and inexpensive, maybe even with some chipped paint. But that's their culture. They ride them to move between campuses. They also have their own restaurant with healthy food for many years now, and they encourage people to eat healthy. Google also conducts employee surveys. For them, it's called Google Geist. Google is really fond of coming up with names for their processes. Even the employee survey is called Google Geist, which means Google Spirit. This is a tool for working with engagement. They developed their own questionnaire, which is actually similar to the Gallup questionnaire, only theirs has 100 questions and a 5-point scale. They change some of the questions each year, depending on what is relevant to them. About 90% of employees participate in this survey, which is a lot. And those who have conducted surveys in large companies know that it's not easy to engage such a number. It is possible to participate confidentially. You can even choose not to provide information about your demographics, such as where you work, which country, whether you are an employee or a manager. You can indicate this optionally. The survey results, both positive and negative, become available to all company employees within a month, and any manager with more than 3 respondents receives their individual report for their team. With a single mouse click, managers can share information with whomever they wish, with whomever they deem necessary, and many do just that. This is what the outcome of the review looks like. Or rather, no, this is the review itself, the question itself. Like this in the end, so the manager receives the results, and the company culture at Google is also spoken about very positively by the employees themselves. They really like the culture there. There is even a book about Google's corporate culture written by a former employee, which talks about how Google works. There are actually many books about Google, since the company is exemplary in many ways, and there is a lot to learn from it. So many books are published. Innovation is what distinguishes the company Google. It is a very innovative company. They encourage employee creativity. How does this happen? Employees are allowed to express themselves by drawing on the walls. In addition, they can come to work at any convenient time, wear pajamas if they want, and bring dogs to work. A relaxed, creative, and fun environment brings psychological benefits to Google employees, which in turn benefits the company through more motivated, dedicated, and productive employees. And every 1st of April, Google employees are allowed to plan and execute jokes and pranks. For example, a kind of office organized a pajama day, so everyone came to work in pajamas, which is not prohibited. If you want, come in. Google employees are allowed to spend 20% of their time on projects that interest them. Well-known email, I think you probably use it too. Gmail was exactly such a project. Paul Buchheit once decided that we basically have a lot to create email. Let's make our own email. Yes, he drew there. Such it is a simple design. So here's an example of the first mail design, and it launched. No one planned to launch Google Mail. It was just someone's project because it was allowed, and now it's the most popular mail in the world. Google even has culinary courses. In addition to the kitchens in Google offices, cooking classes are also held for those who want to learn how to cook delicious meals. Company employees say that this pastime not only helps learn new dishes, but also brings colleagues closer together. There is also sports within the company Google. Gyms are present in all company offices and operate 24/7, meaning around the clock. And it's not just a gym, you can choose a direction. There are many different options: boxing, fitness, anything you want. The offices are also very beautiful and comfortable. Everywhere Google opens an office, they try to choose the coolest place, the coolest location, the coolest renovation. That's why for the location of its branches, the management chooses extraordinary places. For example, in New York, a patio opens with a view of the city. Yes, we see a picture, and according to Google, when there's such beauty around, work practically does itself. Well, and this is also a good bet to make people who are used to remote work want to go to the office. Because, well, you want to visit some pleasant places, a pleasant establishment, and the office becomes one of such places. Google pays great attention to HR analytics. They're real fanatics about this. They emphasize data-driven decision-making. It is deeply ingrained in the Google engineering staff, because that's how everything is decided in engineering companies. The company Google recognizes that metrics like costs and output alone cannot fully capture the entire picture of employees' work. Although performance metrics are important indicators of effectiveness, they do not cover the human aspect of HR. Therefore, Google actively uses so-called qualitative data alongside quantitative data to better understand the dynamics of internal culture. Well, the most prominent and well-known projects are Project Oxygen, meaning oxygen, and Project Aristotle. At Google, such projects are handled by P-Lab. They call it the People Innovation Lab. This is a unique subgroup that no other company has. It conducts applied experiments within the company to determine the most effective approaches to people management and to maintain a productive environment. Well, they really have many innovations, and some things they don't even share with other companies. So if you search for any mentions of the PyLab, they will be minimal. Just literally a few projects have become known. I'm sure there are many such internal secrets that Google doesn't talk about, and Google are big fans of analytics. That is, they constantly formulate different hypotheses, from quite serious to very humorous to some that might be absurd, regularly collecting data for hypothesis analysis. Some find metrics that can be constructed, analyze the connection between data, and discover some insights. And then, based on this, they act. For example, a competence model for a leader was developed. Initially, with the company's assumption, is it time to fire all the leaders? We are so great. We have the best employees. Let's build a holacracy. This was such a humorous idea, but they conducted a study where they looked at whether the personality of the leader affects the team's effectiveness, and found that it does. Initially, they discovered 8 competencies, then 10 leadership competencies that affect effectiveness. They began to develop these competencies and provide leaders with feedback, thereby improving management. Well, that's the story about the company Google. Homework for those in the course. For those not in the course, I invite you to join. It is truly a valuable course on how this industry works from an HR perspective. With a full set of knowledge to work in it, subscribe to Google's social networks. Here are those that were. Look at the latest posts on social networks and analyze HR practices at Google from this presentation and describe which 5 ideas your company could implement. If you do not work anywhere, then analyze your previous company. What's next in the second class? We will talk about current HR trends in these companies. That's all. Thank you, everyone. I invite everyone to this course and see you soon. Bye-bye. It was nice to see you all.